Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Nelson from KNH. Can you hear me?
Yes, good afternoon. We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, thank you so much. I'd like to take this opportunity. First of all, apologies as we are waiting for more of our colleagues to attend. My name is Dr. Carol Okoth. I'll be your moderator for this session, session that is so exciting. I'm so happy to see very many of you are attending. Thank you for your attendance. Thank you for taking your time out. Very interesting topic, anti-doping measures in sports in Kenya and what is our role as medical practitioners. I know we usually wonder where do the two intertwine, sports and medicine. So this is an opportunity to see how we come together and in a very noble fight to help our athletes fight this menace of doping. So a brief introduction of myself. I said I'm Dr. Carol Okoth, a physician. I work with the Ministry of Health, and I'm also a member of the Medical Commission of the National Olympic Committee. I'm very proud to say alumni, should I say, of both the Kenyatta National Hospital and the University of Nairobi. I also walked those, I won't call them, okay, for lack of a better word, the streets, going through my training, both as an undergraduate and a postgraduate student. And these two great institutions played a really important role in shaping me as a physician and also as an athlete. I happen to have walked those corridors when I was still an athlete. So it's really an honor to come and give back to this community. So thank you for attending. And I think I should say that I'm a testament that these two institutions produce world-class practitioners, medical practitioners, and I'm happy to say that I happen to have served as a first female chief medical officer for an Olympic team. So kudos to the good work being done by KNH-UoN. So without much ado, I'll introduce, so I'll just run through the list of my colleagues who will be joining us in this talk this afternoon. As we wait for our Secretary General at the National Olympic Committee, I'll introduce the rest who are already in. So we have our chairperson of the Medical Commission, Dr. George Karanja. Then Dr. Bargoria will also wait for him. He's a colleague at Kenyatta National Hospital. He works with the Athletics Kenya's the lead doctor. Then from the Anti-Doping Agency, we have two listed presenters. Currently, we'll be having Mr. Kennedy Mwai, who will be joining us. Mr. Yauma has sent his apologies, but he's very much with us in spirit. So, Dr. Karanja, should we just go ahead and start off?
Hi, Dr. Carol. Francis is in. The FD is in, so he can do the opening.
Sorry, Susan, could you just repeat?
The Secretary General is in, so he can do the remarks, the opening remarks.
All right, thank you so much. I see as Susan from the Programs Officer from the National Olympic Committee. Welcome, Susan. Has alerted me, Mr. Mutuku, and Mr. Mutuku, our Secretary General, has joined in, and Dr. Bargoria has also joined in. So Mr. Mutuku, I'll take the honor of introducing you to the audience. So as I mentioned, Mr. Mutuku is the current Secretary General of the National Olympic Committee, a very important key figure in this activities of the Olympic Committee, organizing our teams. We keep seeing our teams out there in the Olympic Games, in the Commonwealth Games. So this is a very key figure in ensuring that our athletes are well prepared and participating in those games, and we on this side are cheering. So I'd like to welcome you, Mr. Mutuku. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Caro. I hope I'm audible because I've stopped somewhere on the road. Dr. Caro, just confirm that I'm audible.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's such a great pleasure for me to be representing the other members of the Executive Board of the National Olympic Committee of Kenya. National Olympic Committee of Kenya is led by Dr. Paul Tergat, one of our top legends in the country. He would have loved to be with us, but right now he's on travel actually on its way as we speak to go and represent us in a meeting which will be held later. We are extremely grateful to have such a large number of specialists, a large number of medical people who are in the forefront of in our medical area attending this particular forum and coming to join us as we start the discussion on the anti-doping. However, mine is to give you a brief of who the National Olympic Committee is. Probably some of you have interacted with the Olympic Committee in one way or another, but allow me to just give you a brief. For those who know, just listen through. For those who it's a new organization to learn, I hope you'll be able to pick one or two things about it. National Olympic Committee brings together about 33 federations who are in the program of Olympics and the Commonwealth. When we say the program of Olympics, is that during the Olympics, there are about 33 different sports which are played. And these sports are run by different international federations. For example, we have athletics, we have rugby, we have football, we have the martial arts. All these are different federations which come together to celebrate Olympics, and therefore all the sports which are in that particular program are members of the National Olympic Committee. We join about 205 other National Olympic Committees of the world to be part of the International Olympic Committee. And our primary vision is to make this world a better place through sports. So that's what we try to do. That's what drives us. But in between, we have some primary objectives. The big objective is celebration of Olympics every 4 years. That is the Summer Olympics, celebration of the Winter Olympics every 4 years, and celebration of the youth versions of both events every 4 years. And those 4 years are interchanging. For example, in 2026, we are going to have the Winter Olympics and we are going to have the Youth Olympics. While in 2024, we are going to have what probably all of us know, the 2024 Paris Summer Olympics. The next thing is to promote the values associated with the sports. That's normally what we do. And sometimes people wonder, so between one Olympics to the other, what do we do? We have different programs which we run. We run programs on environment, programs of gender, programs of sports and development, sports and peace. For example, when we talk of sports and peace, we just introduced archery to some of the counties within the country, which for long have the issues of cattle rustling and inter-community fights. And so what we are trying to do is the same skills they're using for bows and arrows to be able to use them for sport through the archery sports. And that's what we are trying to do. Some of the other things we do right now, you all know that environment is a big issue in the world, and we are also trying to use our sports people to be able to be in the lead in terms of championing and creating awareness in terms of sustainability in every aspect of our world. The other one is gender. Right now, at the top level of Olympics, we are trying to aim for a 50-50 ratio within the youth events that has happened, and therefore to be able to promote the gender equity and where possible equality, then we push that gender. And we have a very, very active program currently in Kenya where we are trying to promote especially women, because historically they have been disadvantaged in very many aspects in terms of being given opportunities. And that's why, for example, when we went to Tokyo 2 years ago, we were able to send a team which had more women participating than men, and that was very good. And we also aiming the same thing will be for Paris 2024. That is on the Olympic side. On the Commonwealth, we are part of the 72 nations of the Commonwealth. Originally, as you all know, the Commonwealth nations, we are all the nations which were under the British rule. But from a sports perspective, several other countries have joined that program to be able to participate in the Commonwealth Games and in the Commonwealth Games program. So like now we prepare the Team Kenya to go and participate in the Commonwealth like we did this year. And we'll also be preparing them next year to go and participate in the Youth Commonwealth Games. And even within the Commonwealth, there are also other values. For example, the values which we push within the Commonwealth is youth, sustainability, and inclusion. So these are the programs we run across the country. We build capacity within our federations. A lot of the people who run federations are elected through a political system. And so we build capacity by giving them education, by giving them opportunities to be able to do different things. We train coaches. We offer scholarship to athletes. Right now, we have about 20 different athletes who are under scholarships in preparation for the Paris 2024 Olympics. There are 2 teams. We are currently have, I'm sure most of you might know Malkia Strikers, the volleyball team is under our team scholarship in preparation for Paris 2024. We also have the basketball 3x3. 3x3 is a version of 3 players against 3 players in the basketball. And now we have the women's team who impressed us in the earlier editions of competition this year. And therefore we're able to award them a scholarship so that they can be able to try and qualify for the Paris 2024 Olympics. Over and above that is trying to support Team Kenya. Team Kenya is to inspire us as a country, and therefore we support and we build the team around the team. And one of the teams around the team is our medical team, and you'll hear a lot from our commission, what we do through our commission. And we are hoping that this engagement will open opportunities for as many as of you are interested to be part of the Olympics program. Every time when we are taking a team for this championship, we normally have a team of medical experts. We are also encouraging federations to start having their own medical commissions, and probably you might have an interest in the martial arts, the racket sports, or the ball sports, and therefore an opportunity to serve in the medical commission of the respective federation would be good, because that is the way that we can be able to promote our sports in conjunction with the medical players in the medical field, because there's a lot of research, there's a lot of knowledge which we can benefit from here, and so that we don't just come to you when it is very late, when one of us is injured or when one of us is sick. We can be able to get interventions at very early stages. Yes, we realized in the last couple of games that mental wellness was a big issue, and we were getting interventions very late. So the more we engage the medical fraternity, the more we can be better, the more we can be able to support our athletes. Doping is a big issue in Kenya. There are experts within our anti-doping agency of Kenya who will be speaking to us to explain to us what are the issues. But all we are saying is that as Kenyans, you want to be part and parcel of the solution. You want to be part and parcel of the conversation. We invite you to be part of this, but beyond this, continue engaging with us, engaging with our sports people at every given time. So once again, it's our pleasure in terms of representing our executive. We all have a great pleasure in hosting you, being part of you, partnering with everyone today so that we can start this conversation and what we can be able to do. Thank you very much. Dr. Caro.
Thank you very much, Francis. That's a very elaborate presentation. You can see that there is so much in the world of sports, and we as medical practitioners handle healthcare, and this is an opportunity that has presented itself for us to manage athletes in this different field, but it's still very relevant to our training. So I will go ahead and welcome the chair of our medical commission, Dr. Karanja. Welcome, Dr.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, Dr. We can hear you.
I'm very humbled to the participants. I'm very humbled to be with you. And I think mine is to take you through about our what is a medical commission.
Hi, Dr. Sorry to interrupt you. I think maybe you can just. Hello, Dr.
Medical and Scientific Commission. We are domiciled
Hello, Dr. Karanja.
is the hi, hello.
Yes, Daktari, your
Yeah,
internet connection is very clear. I think,
hear me?
could you kindly just start again? We lost you somewhere. Could you kindly just start? The connection wasn't very clear.
Hear me?
Let me just quickly reach out to Daktari. I think
Yes.
the connection is not very clear. Let me just reach out to him.
Can you hear me? I can hear you.
We are not hearing you very clearly on this side, but I was just requesting if you could just
Carol?
start. Yes, Daktari, you can hear me?
Hear me?
Yes, could you kindly just start again? The reception went off just as you were starting. Could you just start again, kindly?
So thank you. I think I'll go back again and I say I introduce myself again. My name is Dr. George Karanja. I'm a chair of the medical. Yes. Yes, I can hear you well. Okay. I said, now can you hear me? Caro. Hi, Caro.
Yes, now it's better.
Caro.
Yes, now it's better, Daktari.
Caro, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you,
Hello.
Daktari. Continue, Daktari, I can hear you. We can hear you.
You can hear
Yes.
me?
Yes.
So, yes. So, okay. I was saying that I'm the chair of, I'm Dr. George Karanja, the chair of the Medical and Scientific Commission. This is a commission, part of the NOC commission. It's part of the 9 commissions in the NOC National Olympic Committee. Our MAD, as a part of our introduction, the Medical and Scientific Commission is one of the 9 studying commissions that are formed in line with the International Olympic Committee recommendations. And its role is to provide a guiding reference for the sports federations affiliated with the National Olympic Committee, especially on matters relating to the protection of the health of athletes. That is, in other words, the practice of clean sports. Usually it is composed of 9 members, and this consists of various cadres of medical personnel, including consultants, physiotherapists, physicians, and they are drawn from various sporting federations, from the Ministry of Health, the regulatory bodies, and the universities. We have a term of reference that guides us, and there are usually 6. One is to provide advice and guidance to the National Olympic Committee Executive Board so that they can execute their mandate. So another one is to make recommendation to the Executive Board regarding strategic programs that they have. As the Secretary General said, there is many strategic programs that are there, and we come in terms of medical aspects. We also help the National Olympic Committee be an opinion leader on relevant matters, especially to do with sports and medicine. We develop and oversee program of NOC Kenya by giving expert opinions. And that's why, as you see below, there are several cadres of medical practitioners. We review policies and ensure the National Olympic Committee has appropriate policies and strategies for execution. As you know that the various federations worldwide, they are required requirements are needed for medical, for advertises to practice. So we review those issues and the policies that are being brought into by the federation so that they are in line with what we do. We also report on one of the role is supervising the provision of healthcare and also National Olympic Kenya competition, the Olympics and Youth Olympic Games. We also do deliver evidence-based education to athletes and their entourage. And I'm happy that we are among us, we are medical colleagues, and information regarding athletes is well in our commission. We also develop and promote the adoption of ethical standards in sports and medicine. This is in the respect that when you compete, you don't have to win, but you need to compete. Competition is healthy, but it is not, you don't have to use undue means like doping so that you can win a competition. And that's the essence of today's topic, because we want being people or athletes to be ethical in whatever they do. We also explore the potential of technologies so that we can optimize athletes' health and prevent their potentially damaging effects. So during games, if they get injuries or handle recovery processes. We also are mandated to promote health and physical activity athletes. So with that we have at the moment, the medical commission has works with healthcare providers who have specialties in sports and also experience in handling athletes. Most of these specialized people have done courses in sports medicine, and so they are very well conversant with what need to be done about the athletes. Some of the specialists that we have are especially medical doctors, we have physicians, we have orthopedic surgeons, we have gynecologists, we have dentists, we have pharmacists, we have ophthalmologists, among others. We also have a general surgeon just in case athletes need to have surgical operations that doesn't involve the orthopedic surgeons. Then we have a team of highly specialized physiotherapists who handle the athletes. And for their nutritional needs and advice, we have our nutritionists who are experienced and quite learned and have expertise in sports nutrition. For their well-being as a mental health beings, we have sports psychologists who handle issues to do with sometimes when sports people go and they compete, they are not doing as they are supposed to do. Sometimes they have mental breakdowns, mental burnout, many issues to do with mental issues, and also to work out and make them do their best. So we have sports psychologists. We also have strengthening and conditioning coaches who are specialized in making sure that our athletes are in optimal conditions. And we have sports scientists who help in designing programs for trainings. So you can see, my colleagues, this is a big team. It is, but these are small proportion. We have as federations. Most of these federations don't even have medical personnel. They encourage people to get interested and be of this. And we would encourage, as you'll be hearing from the anti-doping authority, to be able to doping. So for now, I wish to stop there so that we can go to the gist of today's topic. Thank you. Thank you, Carol.
Thank you for that elaborate presentation, Dr. Karanja. As you can see, the medical and the science team, the team behind the team is actually quite big, and it's quite important because we see that an all-rounded athlete is better prepped for a good performance, and that is what we're really looking forward to for our athletes. And I know because of the very varied specialities that are engaged in both your institutions and also with those who are attending this webinar, you can start seeing opportunities of participating in sports. So just put down your notes. We also leave our contact so that you can also reach us out. We do offer mentorship and assistance to those who want to work in sports, so that we have a team that is well prepared and well versed in their work. So without wasting much time, I will welcome Mr. Kennedy Mwai, our colleague from the Anti-Doping Agency of Kenya, to just give us more with regards to this anti-doping stories. What are these? How do we come in as medics? How do we help our team, Team Kenya, maintain its name? How do we help in this fight? Because in reality, it's a fight for each and every one of us as a Kenyan. We're very proud of our heritage, and something we keep bragging about. We say that in the last two Olympics, in 2016 and 2020, the national anthem of Kenya was played last at the closing ceremony of the games, courtesy of our wins in the men's marathon and the women's marathon in 2020. So this is a really great honor, and we really need to do our best to protect the heritage of our team. And let's all chip in. Let's hear what Mr. Mwai has to say. So as I mentioned, Mr. Martin Yauma is currently not with us, but he's with us in spirit. He got another engagement. So welcome, Mr. Mwai.
Thank you, Daktari. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. And good afternoon, everyone who is listening to us. Daktari, confirm to me whether you can hear me loud and clear.
Yes, Kennedy, I can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Daktari. And our participants today, it's a great honor to have you on board. Indeed, as I was sharing yesterday with Daktari, that we, as an Anti-Doping Agency of Kenya, we have been looking forward to the day we'll talk to the physicians and bring them on board in the fight against doping in sports. As you have been told, the head of Anti-Doping Education and Research was unable to join us today, but is aware that we are here and having this talk, which is very important for the agency. So I'll go to whom we are as the Anti-Doping Agency of Kenya. And I'll take you back, as Daktari and the Secretary General and Dr. Karanja have talked about Olympics in depth. And my question is, are we going to participate in 2023 Olympics? I don't know, maybe. Let us look back at 2008. Kenya performed very well in the Olympics. That was in Beijing, China. And after that, there was a huge cry out by the world asking, are these athletes clean? Are they genuinely winning these competitions? So in 2009, the government of Kenya signed or ratified the UNESCO Convention Against Doping in Sport, where the government committed itself to take up matter to fight doping in sport. And between that is 2009 and 2012, there was established a body that is Kenya Anti-Doping Agency, And that body did not have any legal mandate into it. It was just a body as on paper, but was not doing anything. So in 2012, there was also pressure for Kenya not to attend Olympic Games because they were not putting in place, or the country was not putting in place measures to combat doping. And come 2016, Kenya was actually declared non-compliant because they had not established measures enough and an anti-doping agency that would fight doping in the country. So in 2016, after the pressure and after the country had been declared non-compliant, there was the move by now the parliament to set up the anti-doping bill, which was passed in 2016. And this was also amended in 2022 that provided for establishment of anti-doping agency of Kenya. And therefore, since 2016 up to now, the agency is in place and has been coordinating and implementing anti-doping programs in Kenya. Within Africa, we are affiliated to Africa Zone 5, that is RADO, that caters for Africa from other countries in Eastern Africa, that is Egypt, Sudan, Ethiopia, Djibouti, Kenya, and Rwanda, Tanzania, such kind of countries within the Eastern Africa. And we are part of the global fight against doping affiliated to the World Anti-Doping Agency. Our headquarters are in Nairobi, Kenya, and we are fully funded by the government of Kenya. What, therefore, is the mandate of this agency? One is to carry out information sharing and values-based education. Our athletes, we are required to provide them information on the fight against doping. Basically, this is to help us stop what we call inadvertent doping, where athletes end up getting sanctioned, but they get sanctioned because they didn't know. And our information sharing is not geared towards athletes only. It's also geared to athlete support personnel, that is the coaches, the trainers, and also medical practitioners. And that is why we are very much happy to be talking to over 600 medical practitioners, so that they get to know what it is about doping, where they come in the fight against doping, and therefore we join hands in stopping this menace that is causing a lot of problems in our Kenyan sport. The other mandate that we do have is what we call to carrying out effective doping tests. And when we talk of effective doping test, we don't just wake up and test athletes. A lot of times we depend on a lot of intelligence, a lot of investigations, so that when we are going to test an athlete, we have some background information as to why we are testing these athletes. And finally, as I said, we do collect a lot of intelligence, we do a lot of investigations. And of course, when we are doing these investigations, at times we find ourselves knocking at the doors of doctors, we find ourselves at health facilities, because as you go learn in a few minutes time that some of these prohibited substances are some of the medications that are within our facilities. And therefore, when we are doing our investigations, when we are doing intelligence gathering, we end up knocking to some of these facilities that we have around. And if you ask a common mwananchi, what is doping? Most of them will always say, doping is using prohibited substances. Doping is using dawa, as we say. But the World Anti-Doping Agency, that is WADA, the global body that coordinates and harmonizes the fight against doping, has defined doping as committing any of the 11 anti-doping rule violations. And these violations, they do not just include the athletes. No, as we look at, by the time we cover the 11, you'll see even areas where the clinical officers, medical practitioners, people who are not athletes are also can be implicated in these issues of doping. So the first anti-doping rule violation is the presence that is in the athlete's sample, be it the urine sample or the blood sample. If there is presence of a prohibited substance, definitely that is a sanctionable offense or a rule violation. And most of these you find an athlete getting sanctioned for 4 years or 2 years, depending on the substance that has been found in their body. There are times when we do not test the athlete, we do not collect the sample, but out of our own investigations, out of even maybe documentary evidence, we are able to establish that indeed an athlete has used or attempted to use a prohibited substance. For example, there is a system we use called athlete biological passport, where we monitor the hematological profiles of the athlete, where we look at the red blood cells and the reticulocytes. And if you're not able to find that in the sample or in the sample athletes has provided, we can use the ABP to establish that indeed an athlete had used a prohibited method. For example, when there's cases of blood transfusion, it can be picked out and we can be able to establish that there was use or attempted use of a prohibited substance. That violation is related to athletes only, because coaches, doctors, people surrounding the athletes are never tested at any time. The third violation that we have is what we have, that is evasion, refusal, or failure to submit to the sample, to collect a sample collection. This is where when anti-doping control personnel, they approach the athlete and maybe the athlete runs away. That is evading. They are evading providing, or they are evading being notified. We may not test the athlete, we may not run after the athlete because we may not even catch up with them, but they have already evaded. And what will just come to go back to offices and record that this particular athlete evaded testing, and therefore they serve a sanction. There are others who may not run away, but they will say, I'm not providing a sample, I'm not cooperating. That is refusal. And when that happens again, that is an anti-doping rule violation. And that is why you find we talk to athletes, we talk to these people that they're sports persons, so that they don't find themselves in a situation whereby they refuse out of maybe fear or out of ignorance, they refuse and they end up getting sanctioned. And the failure to submit is not really per se, because in many times somebody will say, yes, I'm okay, but I'm not providing my urine sample. And remember, some of these, or especially the urine sample collection, is very intrusive, because if the athlete is providing a sample, it has to be witnessed. That means if I'm or we are testing a male athlete, we will have a male chaperone accompanying the athlete to the washrooms, and they will have to witness the sample passing from the athlete's body into the collecting cup. So some may say, okay, I'm going to provide, but at that point where they're told to submit in front of somebody or in the being witnessed, they may say, no, I'm not going to do that. So that is also a violation, and that attracts, again, a sanction of 4 years to 2 years, depending on the cases. Then we have another wearable, or another ADRV on whereabout failures. And a number of Kenyan athletes have missed representing this country out of this sanction. And in whereabout failures is where we ask, especially the top performing athletes, who needs to be tested so often. They are asked to provide information that can give us the direction to where they are so that they are tested. Our athletes can be tested at any time, at any given place. So therefore, with the information they give us, we are able to locate the athlete and carry out the sample collection. In cases where the athlete does not provide accurate information, or they provide accurate information and we go to where the athlete is and we do not find them, we record it as a missed test. If an athlete accumulates 3 missed tests within a period of 12 months, that becomes a violation and they get a 1 to 2 years sanction. Then number 5, we have tampering or attempted tampering with any part of doping control. And if you look at this, we have an athlete, we have athlete support personnel who can also come in this one. And this one comes in where an athlete, maybe, for example, they tear the doping control forms, or they try to bribe the doping control officers, or whenever we have a case against them, we ask them, can you provide evidence that indeed, because athlete will be asked, how did this substance find itself in your sample? And in them providing explanation, for example, they are saying, I was sick, I went to a particular doctor, and their doctor gave me this medication. So therefore, I was not doping, I was just treating myself. So in that kind of a scenario, the athlete provides us that documentation. We may go and try to verify the authenticity of those documents. And if we find that those are forged documents or they are cooked up documents, then athlete gets what we call tampering. And this one can also bring on board athlete support personnel because maybe there was a collusion between the doctor and the athlete, or there was collusion between the coach and the athlete so that they try to beat the system. So tampering or attempted tampering is an anti-doping rule violation that can cut across to athletes and also athlete support personnel. And I'll give a good case because it is in the public domain, a case of one athlete, that is Jemima Sungong. And Jemima Sungong tested positive of EPO, erythropoietin. And in her defense, she says she had been treated in one of the hospitals in this country. And we asked for documentation. And when the documentation was brought to us, we checked with the facility that was mentioned, but the facility disowned that document. So that case became now a tampering issue and a presence issue. And the athlete ended up getting a sanction of 8 years. Then number 6, we have unlawful possession of prohibited substances or method. Again, this one cuts across. It can be an athlete, it can be a medical doctor, it can be a coach. And in this case, we are saying it's unlawful possession of a prohibited substance. Most of the items that are listed in the prohibited list are common medications that other doctors use in the hospitals to prescribe to patients. So if some of these substances are also controlled products, if they are found to be in unlawful possession of a prohibited substance, then that is an anti-doping rule violation. We also have trafficking of any prohibited substances or method, and we also have unlawful administration of prohibited substances or method to an athlete with the intent of doping. And for medical practitioners, this is very critical for us, because anytime we are able to investigate and realize that indeed this doctor who was giving this medication to this athlete for the purposes of doping, then that becomes a criminal offense, and we will look into it, because a doctor will say, what can a 2-year sanction do to me? What can 1-year sanction do to me? But I want to look at, because that is what is in the code, that is the ADRVs, but we can escalate it from the code or from the sports, and we take it to the criminal aspect of it, and the doctor or the medical practitioner can find themselves in the wrong side of the law. Then we have complicity, and this is where, again, athlete support personnel or doctors or medical practitioners trying to cover up, trying to help the athlete cover up their problems, or maybe they are trying them to commit an anti-doping rule violation. It's called complicity, aiding or abetting the commission of anti-doping rule violation. Again, this is both the athlete and also the athlete support personnel and coaches and doctors, whereby if they're implicated in this, again, this can be escalated and becomes a criminal offense. Prohibited association. Athletes are not required, or they are prohibited from associating with athlete support personnel or coaches, trainers, doctors who have been sanctioned. For example, if there is a doctor that has been sanctioned, or there is a coach who has been sanctioned for any of the 11 anti-doping rule violations, athletes are prohibited, or they are stopped from associating with that person in matter or in professional capacity or in sports related capacity. And therefore we tell our athletes, let them be very careful to keep on checking so that they don't find themselves associated with somebody that is not allowed, or they are not allowed to associate with. And then we have the 11th, which is discouraging or retaliating. Many times people may want to report doping. People may want to say, I think there's something wrong happening in this camp. I think there's something wrong happening in this facility. I think there's something not going on well, and there might be issues of doping, and they want to come out and report that. Anybody now who discourages them from reporting is committing anti-doping rule violation. Or anybody who takes retaliation acts against this person who has reported, again, that person is found to have committed an anti-doping rule violation, and they are liable to get sanctions. I want us to discuss the prohibited list, because now this is where all the prohibited substances that I've been talking about, the prohibited methods that I've been talking about, they are contained. And I'm sure Dr. Caro will share a copy to all of us through the channels that we have, so that our doctors are able to access and have a look at this list, and they're able to internalize it. This is a single list. That means the whole world uses this one list. And if you look at my slides, you can see the map, the whole world map is there. So in Africa, Europe, Asia, the list is a single list, and it is revised every year. WADA publishes it 3 months before the effective date. And the effective date or the list comes in force in 1st of January every year. So 3 months before 1st of January, they publish it so that athletes can familiarize themselves with it. Doctors, coaches, and everybody who is involved with athletes can familiarize themselves with the prohibited list. And I will encourage us to download the current version, that is the 2022 version, and also download the 2023 version, which is already out, that will come into effect next year. And you can find it in our website, that is ADAC website. You can also find it in WADA website. And I'm very sure Dr. Caro will be able to share a copy of the same and go through it. And when you're going through it, you find substances and methods that are prohibited at all times. That means at no given time should an athlete be found, or that substance or method be found in an athlete's sample. And there are those that are prohibited in competition. And many of the ones that are prohibited in competition is because their benefits are short-lived, and they can only help an athlete within that period when they are in competition. And the in-competition period starts at midnight on the day before an athlete has an event. And then we also have substances that are prohibited in particular sports. And also in the list, you'll find statements like non-specified substance. And a non-specified substance is a substance where, if found within an athlete's sample, then an athlete will really have to struggle to explain why that substance was in their sample. Because some of these are the prescription drugs, for example, EPO, and an athlete who is having EPO, they would really have to explain as to why that substance found itself in their body. And we also have substances that are specified substance. And these are substances that athletes can easily get over the counter. For example, corticosteroids, betamethasone, prednisolone, all those are part of the ones that are classified as the non-specified or as the specified substances. And then we also have prohibited substances that are prohibited in particular sport. So please take time, because if you find insulin, which is one of the items you use as doctors to take care of diabetic patients, is there in the prohibited list. Beta-2 agonists, they are there. Beta blockers, they are there. We have peptide hormones, all there. Narcotics, morphine, all there in the list. So therefore, let us as doctors familiarize ourselves with the content of the list, so that when we are doing our work that is taking care of anyone or athletes, we are able to know that for athletes, these items or these substances are prohibited. Then you ask me a question, and I know you're asking yourself, athletes, when they get sick, if they have exercise-induced asthma and they need some asthmatic medication, and maybe what you can prescribe, you find it in the prohibited list. How do we go about it? Or we have an athlete who needs some medication, insulin, needs those corticosteroids. They need to manage their conditions with a substance or a method that is prohibited. How do we go about it? The World Anti-Doping Agency has provided an authority or permission for athletes to use these substances that are prohibited for a legitimate medical condition. And that is given through what we call the therapeutic use exemption. And this exemption is given when a particular criteria is met. And part of the one of the things that they check is that, is this a diagnosed medical condition. And that is why your doctors will come in, because you're the one to diagnose, because an athlete will not come and request for TUE without a diagnosis from the doctor. And once now this is diagnosed, the other question we will ask ourselves, is this prescription or the diagnosis, the medicine that is required or for this condition, is it going to enhance performance, or is it going to return the athlete to their normal health? And then we also ask ourselves, is there an alternative for this medication, so that instead of using the one that is prohibited, well, they can go for an alternative? And therefore, if there's no alternative, definitely, then we have our hands tied. But we'll also ask ourselves, is this athlete coming with this condition? This condition, is it caused by a prior use of a prohibited substance? For example, for athletes who abuse steroids, they end up getting the breast development that, I don't remember the term very well, but they develop breasts. You have the medical term for it. And if they need to correct that, they might need some estrogen blockers or something like that. So we ask ourselves, why does this athlete require this prohibited substance? So if we find that it is because of a prior use of a prohibited substance, then it will not be granted. So there's a very clear criteria as to how this TUE is given, and it's also specified. There is no time that we can say now an athlete has been given a TUE, they have a lifetime authority to use the prohibited substance. So it is specified and can be renewed depending on the need. And as we said, a TUE can expire, it can be cancelled, it can be withdrawn, or it can be reversed. We can do our due diligence and maybe realize that the reports that we received, the documentation we received, maybe they were erroneous, maybe they were not done properly. So a TUE can be reversed and withdrawn. The other issue that is affecting our sports persons, and so many are testing positive, is because of food supplements. And the risk with the food supplements is because the industry is unregulated. Much of what happens in this supplement industry is more of business, cutthroat competition, and the industry now lacks full regulation. And there was a study that was carried out by IOC, and they collected a number of supplements. And when they took them to the lab to analyze whether they contained prohibited substances, they found out that 1 out of 4, that is 20%, that is 25% of the items they picked contained or were contaminated with prohibited substances. We have cases, we have athletes who have tested positive, and they have said openly that this supplement is the one that caused me to test positive. And therefore, we tell our athletes, we can never be sure, because even the supplements themselves on the packaging, they don't give any advice to athletes. And some of them, these are contamination, could be occurring intentionally or unintentionally, either in the line of production, or maybe the manufacturer himself wanted to make sales and they wanted to sell it, and therefore they contaminated it with the prohibited substances. So a number of our athletes, a good number, are testing positive, caused by use of food supplements that are contaminated with prohibited substances. Now, what does the law provide? Anti-Doping Act of 2016, amended 2020, classifies in section 42A, classifies the following as offenses. And this is what, and I quote what the law says, or the act says: a medical practitioner, pharmacist, veterinary, surgeon, dentist, nurse, physiotherapist, traditional herbalist, or any other health-related professional who, 1, prescribes or dispenses prohibited substances to an athlete with the intent of doping, or 2, unlawfully administers prohibited substances or a method to an athlete, 3, acquires, stocks, or is found in unlawful possession of prohibited substance, or aids, abets, or in any way encourages unlawful use of prohibited substance, commits an offense. That is what is in our law. That is what is there in the Act, section 42, subsection 4, that is what it says. So therefore, what happens if a medical practitioner does this? 1, they can get a fine, which is of not less than 3 million. They can get imprisonment of not less than 3 years, or they can even get both. That is the 3 million fine and a 3-year imprisonment. Of course, you have seen it not less than. So that means it is at the prerogative of the judge, and depending on the case, they can be able to look at how the case is, and they can give anything above that. On top of that, that professional license for that person will be revoked for a period not less than 1 year. So therefore, Daktaris, as we do our work, let us be aware of some of these things that can be a threat to our work. And we make a point of interrogating these athletes. And I would really want to say it is the mandate, or it is the role of the athlete to declare to the medical practitioner or to their doctors that they are athletes and that they should not be treated with any prohibited substance. So any athletes, and this is what we tell our athletes, whenever you go to your doctor, you go to your physician, identify yourself accordingly. Tell the doctor that you are an athlete, you can be tested at any given time, and they should not administer to you any item or any substance that is prohibited. And therefore, that is why we have shared the prohibited substance with the prohibited list with you, doctors, so that you also familiarize yourself and you're able to guide our athletes accordingly. It's always so painful to have an athlete who went to a hospital for a genuine medical condition and they end up testing positive. What are we saying? Doping is real. Now, this year, over 50 Kenyan athletes this year, from January up to now, have tested positive of prohibited substances. They have been found doping. The whole world is up in arms. Federations are asking ourselves, what is happening with our athletes? So therefore, this now calls for concerted efforts. And that is why we are happy that we have doctors today. NOC is here bringing us all together so that we sit and look at this topic and look at this narrative of doping in this country. And we can be able to do what? We can be able to stop it. So for us, and we're asking our doctors, please speak out about doping. Athletes have come out and have said, there's a particular doctor somewhere, if you give them a call, they can provide a substance. Some of these athletes, if they make such kind of calls, trying to get EPO, trying to get steroids, trying to get these substances, you can come out to us and tell us, I think there's something wrong with this particular athlete who is trying to circumvent the law. So we are asking, come out, support us, give us information so that we are able now also as an anti-doping agency to crack down on these people who are providing or they are doping our athletes. If you know maybe a clinician somewhere who is not very straightforward on how they're doing their work, because honestly, how is EPO finding itself with very healthy marathon runners in this country? There's somewhere there's a breach, and we want every hand on board to come out and speak about doping. And you can look for any act or even any act of omission that could undermine the fight against doping. If you realize there's something that ought to be done, and it's not being done, don't keep quiet. Come out and report it. As an agency, we have enough linkages. We work with DCI, we work with the other government agencies to ensure that we do our work. And in cases where we feel maybe somebody has very critical information, we also work with the Witness Protection Unit, and we are able to engage them so that whoever is willing to come out and report doping, they are free to do so. And therefore, all of us will be able to play our part in the fight against doping. And those are the channels that we have. You can write to us. You can, through the website, go to report doping, say something about it. Through Facebook, you can direct or DM us. You can give us a call. You can do something on Twitter. And from there on, we'll be able to pick up the information that you're giving us, and we'll be able to act on the areas that we have received that information. You can also give us a visit that we are at Parklands Plaza, Westlands, that is 6th floor. So if you have some, you may feel you may walk in and provide us with information, please feel free to share so that we can be able to join hands and end this menace. And that was my time. Thank you so much for listening. Back to you, Daktari.
Thank you very, very much, Kennedy. That was a very, very, very elaborate conversation. I'm seeing it's already generating quite some interest. One of the things that I know people didn't know, and I think, as it said, ignorance of the law is not a defense, that you can actually have your license revoked and you can be fined. And 3 million in this post-COVID times doesn't sound like something that many of us have lying around in the house or somewhere where we can quickly pay that fine. So it's good that we know about this law. Kindly share out this information with your colleagues, speak to them. This platform or this panel is also available beyond this webinar, because then the presentations are usually longer because of the details, but just to sensitize, we'll present it in this way. So Susan from the National Olympic Committee will also share the contacts of the National Olympic Committee, so you can reach out via email or the various social media platforms that are available. And some of the interesting things, Mr. Mwai has mentioned that list, and you're seeing terms such as prohibited at all times, prohibited in competition, in particular sports. So I urge you just have a read of the document, the link that has been shared in the chat box. Just open the PDF. You will get to see what the various medication substances are. And one of the interesting one is banned methods. So for example, administering IV fluids to athletes, the World Anti-Doping Agency has placed a cap on the volume that can be given. So if you're being found giving an athlete a volume of fluid that's above 120 mLs, you have to explain why that is. Blood doping is a big issue in sports as well. So even as our colleagues in the Kenya National Blood Transfusion Service are ramping up their services, we should also be aware that giving blood has to be done within the proper medical space, so that as medical personnel, we're not caught up in that space of blood doping. So many interesting aspects to talk about. The questions, keep them coming. We have one more presentation from our colleague, Dr. Bargoria. So just keep the question coming so that we are able to have a very interactive engagement. And as I mentioned, this platform, the panel, or rather the panelists, will be available via correspondence for any further clarification with regards to the topics that Mr. Mwai has covered. So I'd like to invite you, Dr. Bargoria, maybe just give us some of your experiences in the field of athletics, how it is, working as a medical practitioner in that space, yeah, just to be aware that we do have other federations. Because of the timing, we're not able to have everyone on board, but I'm sure the future engagements will have everyone. For now, we welcome our colleague, Dr. Bargoria. Karibu, Daktari.
Yeah. Good evening, team, SG, Dr. Caro, the team from ADAC, colleagues from KNH, where I also work as an orthopedic surgeon. As Caro mentioned, my name is Dr. Victor Bargoria. I'm an orthopedic surgeon based here in Nairobi now, previously in Eldoret. And I also work with the National Track team, which is Athletics Kenya. Athletics Kenya is an affiliate of the World Athletics, which is the organization, international organization that runs athletics. When you talk about an athlete, athletics, track and field sport, road running, cross country, mountain running, indoor track and field. Those are the sports that fall under and I'm affiliated with. Within Athletics Kenya, we have a medical body where we have a team of healthcare workers, if I can say that. Athletics Kenya has been in the forefront in not just aspects of athletes' health, but also anti-doping. Athletics Kenya used to run the day-to-day activities within the athletics, but also used to do results management and organize for testing until a point when the government, and rightfully so, set up the ADAC, anti-doping agency of Kenya. And with that, it was really a good thing, because it could streamline the operations in terms of testing, results management, education, and all that. And that's been a big plus for us in sports in Kenya, in terms of keeping the sports clean. Within the world, AIU was set up under World Athletics to be able to ensure that there's integrity in the sport. Now, integrity in the sport goes beyond issues of just integrity. It talks about doping in sport, doing the right thing, just being everybody within the who's involved in the sport, be it the athletes, be it officials, coaches, athlete support personnel, and all those. The education programs that Athletics Kenya does across the country. And today, I think there's a team that is out there talking to athletes from the National Police Service about among other things, doping in sports. So it's an honor. I feel that it's something that I personally am really proud to be doing. That is working with the national track and field athletes. These are the guys who really put Kenya on the map. But as they do that, of course, we have to protect and just ethics, because I'm sure none of us really is pleased when they hear that so-and-so, who's a big name and in the sport and a hero to not just kids, but even adults, has violated something, has cheated, because it's definitely cheating. Because of that, we really need to be out there. And as healthcare workers, we play a critical role. Quite a number of, there's been occasions where athletes have said, oh, I was given in a clinic or a hospital somewhere in this country. Then, of course, the issue of ignorance comes in, but also there's intentional. It could also be intentional. Because of that, it becomes an issue where, if we have the knowledge, we are able to counter this and to address it so that it does not infiltrate and permeate to the sport that we all love. I have quite a number of experiences in dealing with these athletes and in educational point of view, in travels, but my main focus professionally is in the management of their injuries, and physicians, family doctors who on a day-to-day basis, or whenever there's need, we refer athletes, and they're able to get evaluations and medical reports. And if there's need, mainly, especially in pulmonary and conditions, they through them they are able to request for TUEs, and if granted, they're able to be on that medication. For now, I think I'll leave it at that, because I respond to question and answers, and I'll be glad to take even emails, or even through my social media platform, which I'll put up on Twitter, where I respond to questions regarding athletes. And also is a platform that athletes use to reach out to me just in case they have a question regarding their management of their medical conditions or concerns that they have that of a medical nature. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. So that was Dr. Bargoria, who works with our athletics team. And you can hear that we are, as medical personnel, very in touch with the needs of our athletes, and in the process want to ensure that they're given the right conditioning and the right preparation to allow them to perform optimally. Dr. Karanja, I don't know if you had something you probably wanted to add as well from your experiences.
For me, no, I think I am happy with the progress we have made so far, unless we have questions. You can hear me, Carl?
Yes,
Carol,
yes, I can hear you, Dr. Ari. Thank you for that submission. So yes, this is a very, very important topic, and we need to educate ourselves more and more. I can see some comments in the question and answer section already asking how can this information be disseminated to healthcare workers across the country. So currently we are over 600 attendees, which is a good attendance. Thank you. Just pass on the information to your colleagues. This webinar will be recorded, but then, as I mentioned, there is quite a lot of detail which we're not able to put into this particular session. So reach out to those contacts that have been given of the Anti-Doping Agency of Kenya, of the National Olympic Committee, so that a proper and more concise presentation can be made for you, breaking down the lists and everything within that space so that the information is very clear. The other comment I'm seeing on training is that this information should go out to our colleges as well, the training institutions where our practitioners are coming through, because it is important that the moment someone is given the license to practice, that they have the relevant information. Your first encounter with anti-doping shouldn't be a court hearing or a criminal investigation. That can be very harrowing. So I think with that, we can then proceed to the Q&A section. And okay, so I'll probably take this to Mwai. There's a question from Esther Mwinga, who is asking, and thank you for your attendance, Esther. She's asking, what are the channels that an athlete should follow when they need a medication from the prohibited list? And this is for a medical purpose. How do they go about it?
Okay, thank you, Dr. I want to take that question. And if an athlete needs medication with a substance that is prohibited, they need to apply for TUE, that is therapeutic use exemption. And they go to our website, they download a TUE form, and that form they will fill the part that contains their details, and then they will bring it to you, the medical practitioner, and you will be able to fill in your diagnosis report. You'll be able to fill in what you've prescribed. You will also fill in your name. You'll also sign it and give us your registration number. And with that, once the form is completely filled by you and the athlete, and if there are any maybe reports or imaging documents that are needed are attached, the athlete will bring that form to us, which can be emailed. And then we have a TUE committee, which is comprised of, has at least 3 physicians who will, plus 2 other members, that is 5-member committee, that will look into that request. And if it meets the criteria I said earlier, then the athlete will be given permission to go ahead and take the medication. Most TUEs are given before the other, or the permission is given before athlete has taken medication. But in cases whereby it's an emergency, athlete has come presenting to you a condition, and this condition requires immediate administration or treatment using a prohibited substance. Doctors, we are asking, don't withhold treatment from the athlete. But once the athlete has regained himself and is able to do his work, you advise the athlete that whatever I've given you is prohibited for athletes, so kindly look for TUE. So they can also apply for TUE retroactively. So thank you so much. That is how we go about the issue of applying for TUE for athletes who require medication with substances that are prohibited.
Thank you so much, Kennedy. And thank you, Esther, for that question. So probably just to add on a bit, it's always important to ensure that the right channels are followed whenever there is a medical justification, just like we do with other medical diagnosis. So the difference with sports is that we don't necessarily work, for example, in Kenyatta, in Clinic 17 or in the tower block in the wards. We are out in the field or in a sports center or something, a setting like that. But it still calls for us to practice medicine in the right way. So if there is a proper justification and a pathway, for example, as Moy has rightfully said, you have the tests, you have the imaging, so you're following that pathway, and that pathway should be clearly documented within the file of that client, and even as you're filling the TUE, such that at the end, when you are putting your signature as a medical practitioner, you are also confident that this will not come back to bite you. Remember, there is that sanction to you as a medical practitioner that you can actually be sanctioned for. Sorry, why? Sorry. Yeah, you can actually be sanctioned for giving an athlete something that is not justified. So we always have to ensure that our medical records are well written, they're clear, the information is justified. And as you are signing, that you have put in your medical details. And that will probably just take us to another area where we look at the current regulations or the laws in the country regarding our various practices. I know that we have several cadres within this talk. So what does the law say about your particular practice? There's the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Act, the Nursing Act, the Psychologist, Nutrition. So what, so that when you're putting your signature on that document, it does not contravene your jurisdiction. Just make sure that you're acting within your space, because my apologies, I seem to have been dropped off. I hope you can hear me now. So you work within your jurisdiction as a medical practitioner, as defined by your various regulatory boards, so that you're also not, you know, that the athletes or your clients don't also take you down the law path because of your jurisdiction. Dr. Bargoya, it's a very interesting question I've seen here, where it's been asked with regards to IV fluids. And it says, does it mean, it's an anonymous attendee, thank you for your attendance. Does it mean we shouldn't administer IV fluids to athletes unless given a go ahead? So I'm asking that to you. For example, you're covering a marathon, and we know how vigorous or rigorous the marathons are. If you are an athlete would need IV fluids, can you give it? Do you not give it? What are your thoughts on that particular question?
Can I have the video on? I prefer sometimes somebody is possible. I find it easier to talk with my. Anyway, yeah, yes, Carol, thanks. That's a very good question. I'll take you back to some experiences that I've had within as we've been out taking care of teams outside the country, especially in the summer games. We've had situations where there's competitions in very hot, humid environments. The most memorable one was in Qatar, Doha, during the World Championships in 2019, where the marathon had to be run at night. and even with the conditions at night, the heat and the humidity was still so much that we had a lot of casualties in the race. In terms of even these elite athletes, almost half did not get to finish the race. And these are well-trained guys. The end of the race was like, they set up something almost like an ICU, you know, with cooling baths and, you know, monitoring equipment and all that, because they expected it. I mean, they planned ahead. Now, there's protocols for treatment of people who end up with heat stroke. But now when it's athletes, it's even worse because they've already pushed their bodies to the limits and they can actually die. So in these situations, when IV fluids are indicated, just to expand volume and do that, the critical care guys are there. They take charge. They put the life of the athlete first as a priority. And in those conditions, documentation is done and the appropriate quality of care is given. And then documentation is done and the same is provided. And these are these are not in everyday situations. These don't happen like in training or, you know, they could happen in training, but usually they are in competition. So the documentation is key, but the quality of care and the standard of care that should be provided should be that that meets that can be justified from a science point of view. Yeah. Another event that had to be adjusted was the Olympics. When we went for the Olympics last year, myself with the athletes, about 4 athletes, Eliud Kipchoge and a few others, plus the team, had to travel up north to Sapporo, where we competed, which was cooler. But even with that, it wasn't so cool. I mean, the temperatures were almost 40 with very high humidity. We had something almost like an ICU at the end of the race, where people had to be put in cooling baths, IVs had to be started, but that was to save the lives of the athletes. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that clarification, Dr. So you can see that these are actually real life situations. And I know even in the World Cup in Qatar at the moment, they're also looking at how to manage heat. So using IV fluids is a justified way of managing dehydration. So to just answer your question, or rather to add more to Dr.'s presentation, you have to have a justification. If an athlete comes to you or comes to your facility, they are not dehydrated, just follow the right pathway, because what could happen if you give IV fluids larger than the volume that's prescribed, you actually may be diluting the blood. And as Maya has said, that could be a possibility that somebody wants to dilute the presence of a substance in their blood, such that when the tests are done, the substance is either not detected or it's at a very low level. So just be careful that any time you are administering any medical service to an athlete, ask them. But as Maya has said, they're expected to justify and then make sure, to declare, and then make sure that whatever you're giving is within medical, is justified. Don't just give it for the sake. And in the same breath, don't exchange samples for people in the hospital. Make sure they're labeled well so that you also don't get caught in that trap of either tampering or trying to make an athlete evade being caught. So I'm sorry, Mbogo, we saw your question.
Caro, just one more thing. Sorry about that. When it comes to the medication and whatever can be administered, it's also important. I know Marty mentioned about we have the in competition and out of competition phases of the athlete. Now, there are things that are prohibited within the competition period, and there are those that are allowed outside the competition. So as we familiarize ourselves with the code and the WADA code and all that, we need to bear that in mind as well. Yeah.
Daktari, can I say something on IV?
Yes, kindly.
Yes, yes,
Moy.
please.
Yes, for intravenous infusions that are done within hospitals or under surgical procedures or in clinical diagnostic investigations, those are not prohibited.
No, yeah,
So
they're not,
please, doctors, save lives, do your work. What is prohibited is if somebody is doing that outside a hospital scenario, or outside a clinical diagnostic investigations, or outside a surgical procedure that is well known. So that is what is prohibited. And that is if it exceeds the 100 ml per 12-hour period. So you find some creative people who may go in their own houses, in their own camps, they have set up this IV to sort out their issues. Those are what is prohibited. But if you're a medical doctor, you're doing it within your capacity as a doctor in your hospital facility, please, those ones are not prohibited for our athletes. So let us, as Dr. Bergoria said, let us familiarize ourselves so that we also don't withhold treatment for something that is genuinely and it is not prohibited. So that's what I wanted to bring out, Dr.
Thank you very much. I've seen a comment from Dr. Karuri. Thank you so much for your attendance as well about IV fluids and in competition phase. I think we are also putting in consideration our athletes who are in the pool, the registered testing pool, who are tested at any point in time. They may not have, they're basically the elite, so they can be tested at any time. So I think that is also for them to protect themselves. They always have to be clean always, but that doesn't mean that athletes should choose when to be clean and not. Just a caution for the athletes who are tested at any point in time, regardless of whether they're in competition or out of competition. Okay, there's a question here by Mbogo. Sorry, we had seen your question at the top where you were asking about nutritionists, and Mwai had mentioned that the use of supplements. So we know that supplements are used by athletes, but as he mentioned, where you're largely not able to test the specific product and confirm that it is clean, it's a very, I won't call it a gray zone, but it's a zone that's very, not dodgy, but you have to be careful, because remember, anything you prescribe to an athlete will be traced back to you. In the sense that if you prescribe it and it ends up being contaminated, then the athlete can ascribe that prescription to you. So you have to be very cautious where you have supplements. And just as I mentioned, anytime you are giving something to an athlete, you have to document the need for it medically. So when you're supplementing using a nutritional element using these supplements, is it that you are not able to meet it with the diet that is available to the athlete? What was the challenge? And specifically, how are you able to diagnose a deficiency that requires a supplementation? So those are some of the things that will be asked to a practitioner. How do you know that this was a deficiency? How did you diagnose that? And when you prescribed it, are you sure that whatever you were prescribing was 100% clean? Supplements are widely used, especially in the Western world, because they have access to batch testing, which means that each of the supplements that are available to the athlete are tested. In Kenya, we know we have a challenge. We have a challenge in that. And the first part of the question asked, does a clinical, I think this is a clinical nutritionist, have a role? I don't know if this is agent, but I think probably you're asking in the sports world. Yes, nutritionists have an important role. As I just alluded, food is a very important source of energy, a source of repair and growth for the body, because as we look at even the junior athletes, as they grow up and they gain more muscle mass, as we have different athletes in different competitions, some who need to be more muscular than others, those who need energy for their endurance runs and things like that, you need to be able to meet the nutritional need of that athlete. We even have those who, as Mr. Mutuku mentioned, who participate in what we call weight class sports. So the combats where I will fight in a category, I'll just give hypothetical values, 40 to 60 kilos, 65 to 70 kilos. So those who participate in particular weight groups, we usually bring on board nutritionists to help those athletes manage their weight on a more long-term scale rather than having very quick variations in weight in too short a time, because we know that has a medical implication. And just to allude also to what Dr. Karanja mentioned, sports it's a specialty field. So it's always good to have that extra training in sport, so that whenever you're meeting athletes, you're confident and you have the knowledge to be able to manage needs that are specific to an athlete. I hope that has answered your question. Then I think Moses Amimo had commented that he had an interest. The information on how to reach the National Olympic Committee has been posted in the chat box by Susan. So you can just have a look at that and drop an email. And then you mentioned that there were no nursing staff in the complement that Daktari showed. And maybe, I know Dr. Karuri, I'm sorry you're not a panelist, but probably you can put your comment in the chat box. Dr. Karuri works with the World Rally Series, and every time we are hosting in the country, we set up a really elaborate medical setup, a hospital, Shakula Field Hospital, where the athletes are actually participating, and that runs almost like a full hospital. We're even talking about ICU setups. So there is a role for the different cadres of medical practitioners. It's just that it depends on the competition. For traveling purposes to major games, you find that sometimes the hosts do give a cap on how many people can travel with the team, depending on the size of the team. And also the complement of the staff that accompanies the team will be dependent on many other things, the organizers and also the finances that are available, but it's usually what will serve the team's needs.
Yeah, thank you, Doc.
Hi, Doc. Hi, Dr. Karuri.
Yeah. First and foremost, this is an amazing opportunity for healthcare workers and practitioners of different disciplines to contribute to this very important subject of anti-doping. And I'm very happy at the numbers of participants who have joined this. Just to get directly into the question that you have asked, what is the role of other cadres towards different events and setups? And I think, Carol, you've answered it perfectly. Everyone has really an important contribution towards the medical support of the event, and absolutely, it really depends on what is being done, or what sport is being organized. In athletics, in pretty much every sport, all cadres are important, and we do take note of that observation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Karuri. So Dr. Karuri, I mentioned, works with the World Rally Series. He's also a member of our medical commission at the National Olympic Committee. Thank you so much for that. And he's also a champion. He rides, he's a motorcycle champion of East Africa, and we celebrate him for that. So there is another comment here that probably Dr. Bargoria, you could answer this. Millicent is asking, are there long-term effects of some of these substances we are using? We did not present it, but are there long-term effects of these substances? Is Dr. Bargoria still with us? Okay. Okay. All right, but let me just take that. So yes, Millicent, there are effects. As Mwai had mentioned, we have drugs such as insulin, we have beta blockers, we have bronchodilators. We study in pharmacology that these have an effect on the body, and they also have a side effect. Even when they're used in sports, that is something that we still do experience. He's mentioned gynecomastia as a side effect of fluid retention. So there are side effects. We didn't do that presentation here because, as I mentioned, that is quite an elaborate talk, and we hope that this will not be the last, so that we can go into the specific units in that talk that Mr. Mwai did. So there are effects, and that is actually number one when anti-doping, when this anti-doping movement was started. People look a lot at the performance enhancing aspect of it, but we forget that athletes are human beings. Yes, they have super abilities, but they're human beings. So imagine giving steroids to someone who doesn't need them. They end up having diabetes, they end up having osteoporosis. We give erythropoietin to people who don't need it, they end up having clotting disorders. Steroids, androgenic steroids, are known to give people arrhythmias and cardiac issues. So why subject someone who is healthy to that? So that aspect of not exposing an individual to health, something that will compromise their health or even cause death, is actually a very important aspect. And then we say the performance enhancing part of it. So yes, these drugs have side effects, and we need to be cognizant of that even as we speak to our athletes and give them the right options. You can use a strength and conditioning coach to meet up your needs. We need to create a good environment where athletes can talk to us when they have injuries, and we give them programs that allow them to meet their targets. We need to give them the right advice on foods. We need to give them the right mental support. We realize that even in the Olympics, major stars are dropping off because of not being able to handle that pressure. So giving athletes that a right environment to prepare themselves sort of gives them that confidence in their abilities, and they don't have to look over into that side of doping. I hope that has answered your question, Millicent. So if an athlete, this is Philip Kirubi, if an athlete doesn't present himself as an athlete, are we to blame as medics? Mr. Mwai, Philip is asking.
Yes, Philip has asked a good question. If the athlete does not present themselves and identify themselves as athletes, you're free to treat them as per your best practice. So the onus is on the athlete to identify themselves fully that they are athletes and they are subject to anti-doping rules and that they can be tested and there are substances they should not take. But what we are asking also, let doctors also prod deeper. If you're suspecting that this could be an athlete, prod deeper so that you get the whole history. But the onus is on the athlete to identify themselves accordingly. Thank you, Daktari.
Okay, I hope that has answered your question, Philip. And yes, we encourage our athletes to identify themselves. And remember, put it in your records. If you ask and the person or the client does not declare, put it in your records. That can serve as a justification for you should the investigative authorities come and investigate your facility or your records. You have that written down that you actually did ask and the athlete did not declare. And one question that is also related to that is if someone doesn't declare that they're in competition phase and you give them medication that is banned in competition phase, what happens? They didn't tell you. I think we'd use a similar approach as much as possible. Ask these athletes the questions. It's much easier when you're working in that phase. So let's say, for example, when we had the World Under-20 Athletics where Dr. Karuri and Dr. Bargoria were, that one is very clear that you're in competition phase. So a lot of organizers tend to have the medical facilities within that sporting environment. So you're always cognizant of the fact. The athletes will walk around with their accreditation badges that identify them as athletes. But should they come, just continue asking. And if they do not divulge that information, indicate that athlete was asked and did not declare, so that in case they later want to use your name or your facility to justify using that medication, you can be vindicated. A very good comment here from Dr. Pramod Shah, who's also one of our members at the Medical Commission. He reminds us that in addition to IV fluids, also using diuretic therapy, which we use in management of heart failure, which we use in management of kidney disease. If you use diuretics, you can also be trying to dilute the urine so that when the urine sample is taken, you're not detecting the substance. And this can be a challenge for those who are trying to manage their weight or who are just trying to, because losing fluid is a way of losing weight, or those who are just looking out to hide that they're using a drug that is excreted in the urine. So that is a violation, and you will be sanctioned for that. So as you're using diuretics, be careful. As you look at the list, you'll also see that diuretics are listed as a substance that is banned. So there's a question from Jessica Shiraku. Thank you for your attendance. Jessica also works with Athletics Kenya. She's a lead physiotherapist at the Nairobi Hospital. And so she asked us to clarify on the issue of doping in other sports apart from athletics. Maybe Dr. Karuri, you can comment on that. Dr. Karuri, are you still with us, or Dr. Karanja?
Yeah, I'm here. Okay. I realized I was talking to myself on mute.
Sorry.
Jessica, that's a very important question or clarification to make. Anti-doping is, and the ADAC agency cuts across all sports, not just athletics. It's in all sports, and that's why it is a world agency. So in motorsports, the rules are the same. The list is the same. The TUE principles and requirements are the same. The offenses and violations are the same. The only thing that may be a little bit different is the sentencing, which may be different from federation or world organizing body to the other, but it cuts across the board. It's identical. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Karuri. And I know Dr. Karanja and Dr. Bargoria will be in agreement, and also reflected by the discussion or the introduction that was done by Mr. Mutuku. Kenya is a very vibrant sporting nation. We have so many federations affiliated to the Olympic movement, and those that are not affiliated to the Olympic movement. We have our athletes with impairments, that is visual, physical, intellectual. So we have minor athletes, senior athletes. So we have a very wide range of athletes, and each of these special sports disciplines has something that is unique to them. They may have similar issues with regards to doping, and then they may also have the specific ones. If you even look at that section on substances and methods that are banned in particular sports, you'll appreciate that. So as I mentioned in Kionjo too, so we hope that from this we can have more discussions where we can now go in depth into those specific federations and what is unique to that federation and what is general for all of them. Why you had a comment?
Yes, I had a comment because I saw a question on tramadol, and I wanted to make a clarification. Tramadol, as per now, is not prohibited. In 2023, still, it is not prohibited. However, 2024, starting January, tramadol will be prohibited for athletes. So it's good that and this was made by WADA. They made it, they gave a year or so for medical practitioners, athletes to get prepared that come 2024, tramadol will be on the list of prohibited substances. So it's good to know. For now, tramadol is not prohibited for athletes, but come 2024, it will definitely be on the prohibited list, and WADA has already declared so. So let us be aware of that and be cognizant of that as we continue with our medical practice. So that's what I wanted to chip in, Daktari.
Okay, thank you. And that in that line, I remember we were asked about genetically modified foods. That has also generated quite a lot of interest because we know of beef, for example, in some countries, beef is sometimes contaminated with steroids. We don't know, what is in everything we eat unless it's analyzed. So that is an area where we have to keep our eyes open, what is coming in that is new. And so remember, even if the list is out, let's say 2023, the list is already out, but in 2023, January, it starts taking effect. So in 2022, a substance may not be on the list, but in the next year it may. So always look out and make sure you're on board. And yes, that's a very interesting question because tramadol is used for pain management as an option for those who maybe have ulcers or have intolerance to the other medication that is available. So that is something that we have to be aware of in our practice. Oh my goodness, time is really running quickly, but we have, I think we've covered most of the questions. There's an anonymous attendee who's asked us, what ages can people participate in sports safely? Yes, they're actually veteran athletes. We call them masters. I know in athletics, we have them in swimming. Actually, most of the sports have master athletes, and maybe that's a discussion we should find a webinar we can elaborate on further. There was a question, I think, that Moi answered online that asked about the law, and that is the Anti-Doping Act. I hope, anonymous attendee, you have been well answered, and please pass on the message to our colleagues. Ignorance of the law cannot be used as a defense in court. Then the last question from Moses Amimu. Are there any special considerations and exceptions for people with special needs? So the list is as Mr. Mwai said, is used throughout. But maybe you may see some exceptions. For example, the diuretics that are used topically by those with visual impairment, they may be exempt as long as it's justified. But it's just a matter of going through that list with regards to the para sports or the sports that athlete in particular is involved in. And this goes also to athletes who are minors. They still have these rules applying to them. So anytime you're with an athlete, ensure that you have this in mind. So I'm seeing the time is coming to an end. I'll kindly just shut the question and answer section and ask for closing remarks. Susan, is Mr. Mutuku still with us, or would you like to give a closing parting shot on his behalf?
I feel he has dropped off. But on our part as the National Olympic Committee, I just want to say thank you a lot to KNH, to UoN, and to everyone who has participated in this webinar. I think this is a conversation that is ongoing or should be ongoing. So we are very open to more of such engagements, and we'll be organizing more. We hope that we can still get such platforms. I've seen the comments that have been put that we need to have this information to more people out there. And so for us, we keep reaching out so that we have as many people as possible well aware of these problems that we're having in sport, and we can work together to restore the integrity of our sport. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Susan. And remember, Susan has given us the link, not the links, but the correspondence channel to the National Olympic Committee. So feel free to reach out. She'll be able to direct your question to the relevant persons. Dr. Karanja, your parting shot.
For me, it is to thank everyone for I've been to many webinars, but this one I have seen the participants have been very active. Let's keep engaged. Let all of us be minders of our own brothers. Let's spread the word about doping and doping, because it is a menace in our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Karanja. Thank you. Thank you so much. Mr. Mwai, your parting shot.
Yes, thank you, Dr. And I want to also thank every participant who has listened to us this afternoon. Indeed, we have taken your time, and I know it has been meaningful and engaging for all of us. And as an agency, we are very much happy that we are able to talk to medical doctors. For the last 2 years, we have been weighing in on clinical officers, pharm techs, nurses, but we haven't been able to make inroads with medical practitioners. But we are now happy that we are able now to come up and we are able to talk about these issues, because doping is affecting our country. And if all of us take our roles and we do our work, we are able to rid this country and make our sport clean. And as medical practitioners, you are a key cog in that fight against doping. So thank you even for the organizers of this webinar. We do appreciate and thank you for bringing us on board, and we are ready for further engagements. And be it virtual, be it physical engagement, I've seen a question on whether we can cascade these to medical colleges or whether we can reach out to all healthcare workers. We are trying that, and we are ready to go that direction so that we make sure that whenever we are presenting teams to World Championships, to Olympics, there's not that tag that is lagging behind us as a country, that we are a country of dopers. So therefore, thank you so much for listening to us. Thank you for the organizers. We do appreciate so much. Thank you, Dr. Ari, and the rest of the panelists. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mwai. Dr. Bargoria.
Yeah, thanks, Carol. Thanks, Nock. On behalf of myself and Athletics Kenya, I'm grateful for this invitation and being a member of this panel, able panel, to be able to discuss with colleagues on this matter of sports and doping and what we can do as practitioners in this fight. I'll be available. I'm in Kenyatta now. I run the list on Wednesday. If you guys, the guys who come to theater, if we can always have a chat there, we always have very good discussions in between cases. I'm glad that we had this discussion with the neurosurgeon colleagues recently when we had they had their annual meeting in Nairobi here, and it was a very good discussion where we spoke on this and many other matters in sports. I'm looking forward for the future interactions, and I hope to be seeing some of you guys in sports events. Don't just it's good to work and do cases and see patients and all that, but it's also be out there and do sports. So thank you very much, and God bless.
Thank you, and that invitation still stands. We keep telling you, welcome to the world of sports medicine. Dr. Karuri? Is Dr. Karuri still with us? Dr. Karuri, are you on mute? Okay, apologies. Oh, yes, Dr. Ari.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
I was trying to unmute again. I think for me, what I would like to say is the contributions that the medical fraternity can give in fields of sports cannot be measured. It is invaluable. And just like Dr. Bargoria said, it's good to operate, it's good to run clinics and do lists. That's part of our training. But it can be so much, and we can be so much more enriching to our sportsmen and women by giving just our technical contributions and support towards and enriching the sport and protecting our ambassadors of this country. And that is mainly the athletes. That athletes are the people who have brought such recognition to Kenya. And it is, I think, with the brains that we bring onto the front, it is our patriotic responsibility to protect them from this doping menace. So I'm also very much available through the Ethics and Standards Committee. We work very well with everyone in the Medical Commission, led by our very able chairman, Dr. Karanja, and of course with the support of the executive through the Secretary General. Just as a matter of, I really want to encourage all doctors, if you have a few, a few months, a few days, a few weeks, a few minutes that you can contribute towards this very worthy cause, you're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Karuri. And our host, Nelson, any comment from your side?
Mine, us, or rather from the team at KNH, we are very thankful and we appreciate your inputs for this session, and we wish, or rather look forward to more in this series.
Thank you very much. We'll definitely be reaching out for that. And I think I've covered everyone. From myself, I'd like to say a hearty thank you to all the panelists, the hosts of the webinar. Thank you so much for giving us time to share our passion with you. I hope it has rubbed off on all of you. Remember to share the information with your colleagues, reach out so that we can also give you the more concise presentations on this aspect of anti-doping. And remember, as Dr. Karanja presented, there's more to sports medicine than just anti-doping. So our doors are always open to you at the National Olympic Committee, Medical Commission. I work at spinal injury. I work with the Ministry of Health. So you're also free to visit us. Dr. Karanja is at the Kenyatta University. And the ADAC team has given you their location in Parklands. Susan has given you their location at Gallant Plaza, which is just after the MP Shah Hospital. So we are within reach, and you can come physically, you can give us a call. We'll be happy to engage with you beyond this. I'd like to just make an appeal, not an appeal, but a request to the panelists to turn on your cameras. Thank you so much to all the presenters, to all the attendees, sorry. I'd like to wish you all a good evening, and I look forward to seeing you out as we cheer Team Kenya. Remember, we are now preparing for a very busy season in 2023 and also for the Olympics in 2024. And in 2026, Susan, if I'm not wrong, Africa will be hosting the Olympics for the very first time. We'll be hosting the Youth Olympics. So let's all come together and support our country and our continent. Thank you and good afternoon, good evening to everyone. So panelists, would you kindly just turn on your cameras? And thank you to everyone. You're free to leave. But before I say that, I can see that Nelson and the team at Kenyatta have put up the next webinar. I hope everyone has seen it. The approach to a comatose child. This will be a pediatric presentation. And I know for those of us who have children, that will also be an important lesson for us. So remember to tune in this evening from 7 to 8:30 p.m. I hope I've done a good job for you on that, Nelson.
Yes, you have. I think we should be having you now on our platform.
Thank you. Job accepted. Thank you very much. So I'd like to wish you all a good evening. You are free to leave at your convenience. Thank you very much.
Videos, please, for a group photo.
Unless you